Welcome back to the Leadership Forum, a space where corporate leaders share insightful takes on the human side of ingenuity. I'm Saquib Vali, explorer. Say hi to the future. The leader with us today is Ann Arnott, Executive VP CEO of the PTDA, which stands for the Power Transmission Distributors Association. In addition to member events, the PTDA has a robust learning hub, a resource library, and a vibrant charitable foundation championing education, outreach, and workforce initiatives for the industry. Prior to the PTDA, Ann developed a leadership muscle at the Institute of Real Estate Management. One of the stories why I felt Ann would be an amazing guest is just a couple of weeks ago, we were at a PTDA conference, Canadian conference at Niagara Falls. And after the one full day of that entire thing coming through, I asked Ann, hey, Ann, so now that the formal part is done, you must be relieved. And she goes, I rest once all my people get home safe. Now, that's the kind of leader Ann is. Welcome, Ann.
Welcome. Thank you.
And thank you for taking time out from your power pack schedule. And let's let our listeners hear in your voice how you wish to introduce yourself to them. And as you do, please do demystify things our listeners might not be fully aware about the PTDA and may get wrong about the role of industry associations in general.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm Ann Arnott. I'm the Executive Vice President and CEO of the Power Transmission Distributors Association. So the association is a not-profit trade organization. Our membership is 270 distributors and manufacturers of power transmission equipment. Demystify is a great word because we often get confused with the words power transmission. We get confused for the electrical grid, which we are not, or your automotive transmission, which our members don't make those transmissions, but they do make the parts that go in the transmissions. So my 30-second elevator pitch is, if you've ever seen the show How It's Made, or if you took a piece of machinery, any piece of machinery, and cut it in half, all those gears, belts, bearings, chains, everything that's converting that power into motion, that's what power transmission is. So our manufacturer members make the products, and then they choose to sell it through a distribution network. So our distributors, in addition to having the product on the shelf when somebody needs it because their production line has gone down, also provide numerous value-added services from, everything from having an expert standing at the counter and somebody brings in the part and goes, I need another one of these, to designing entire production lines. One of my favorite examples is we have a member who helped design the production line that puts your potato chips in the bag so they don't get crushed. So I mean that's a really good consumer example, because who doesn't like potato chips, right?
Sure.
So as the trade association, so as an association executive, our challenge is always, first we have to explain who our members are, and then we have to explain what we do for them. As a trade association, our mission is to foster the connections between the distributors and the manufacturers, in addition to providing knowledge and information and resources to help them be more successful at what they do and to help them serve their mutual customers. So the Canadian conference that we were at together brings together the distributors and manufacturers doing business in Canada. We also do an annual event every year in October that we call the Industry Summit, which is it's global. We have members from all across the world. Our primary focus is North America, so Canada, the US, and Mexico. In my role with the organization, I lead a staff team of 9, and I lead a volunteer network of over 100. So I have to be a leader in many different ways, depending on circumstances, depending on what we're trying to achieve. It's as you said, power packed. It's challenging. But it's incredibly rewarding.
And that so naturally feeds into the very next area that I wanted to get into, Anne. One of the human conditions that we at Say Hi to the Future explore is heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
And, just a quick bit about what heartbeat, the way we use it, is it's the hyphen between two states. So, for example, the easiest way to explain it is spaces and places. The part that turns a space into a place is heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
The generally the one that people talk about is house and home. And what gets inserted between a house and a home is heartbeat.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of the work that you do is around exactly that. So take us through your work and weave into it how the PTDA is the heartbeat for the industry and its member organizations.
Interestingly enough, our industry has a lot of family-owned businesses. We have some very large publicly traded companies too, but our membership predominantly is family-owned businesses. So these are companies that, you know, have second, third, fourth generation running them. They were started, some of them were started hundreds of years ago, you know, during the Industrial Revolution. So in terms of what the association does, you know, our role is to bring all these companies together, as I mentioned, to serve their mutual customers. The conversations that they have extend beyond transactional. It really is a relationship business. Distributors have connections with their customers. They have the ability to choose from different manufacturers for different products. So it's a relationship they build with the manufacturer in terms of whose product do I trust? Whose service is going to help me when my customer has a problem? And that's built on those relationships. The manufacturers on the other side are like, who do we want out there representing our brand? Which distributors do we feel are going to do a good job of making sure that what we've put into our product translates to the customer? So as the association, our members always point to networking as the number one benefit. And it could be, it's usually the in-person meetings, right? Because relationships, as we know, are best built one-on-one and face-to-face. But we also offer opportunities for them to connect, whether they serve on our committees or they serve as our volunteers. We put together webinars. We do other programs where they just get the opportunity to hear from each other, learn together, and in some way it is transactional, you know, to do business together better. Whether it's sharing their knowledge through our learning hub or sharing their information and their data, either from distributor manufacturer or manufacturer to distributor, so that they can, again, serve their customers better. PTDA, first of all, is a heartbeat of industry, right? Nothing moves without our members' products and services. When I start talking about all the different industry, you can't, I mean, you can, the laptops that we're working on right now were created because of our members. I joke that, you know, we all carry these little devices with us and they vibrate, right? So in that phone, there's a little motor made by one of our members that vibrates your phone. I mean, nothing exists without it. So they truly are the heartbeat of industry. And then PTDA as an association gives them the opportunity, gives them the connections that they need to do it better.
Beautifully said. And so, not to be reductive, but just so that I can summarize it,
Mhm.
I love the fact that, hey, your members are making things that are the heartbeat for all of us around
Mhm.
the world.
Mhm.
And the role of the PTDA would be in fostering connections and relationships. So let's double click on that a bit. What are some of the challenges that your organization needs to overcome, hurdles you need to overcome in order to foster those connections and relationships? Like, you know, just give me some examples so our listeners can have a better understanding of what the PTDA does, but also how they could be taking some of those learnings with them.
I think one of the more difficult challenges that we have as an association is, as I mentioned, the diversity in our member company size, because their needs are so much different. You know, if you're a small company, a small distributor, let's say you've got, you know, maybe 7 or 8 people working for your company. You've got one location in an industrial area, but not an urban area. Your needs are so much different than the multi-billion-dollar New York Stock Exchange traded corporation that makes thousands of products, right? And so, as an organization, let's take the Learning Hub as an example. You know, what we want to provide to those small companies is the fundamental training that they're going to need when they bring somebody in, because they don't have the time and they don't have the capacity to really train the people in all the nuances, right? I face that same thing myself as a small employer. It's really difficult to make sure that you do the onboarding successfully. The very large companies, have not only people, but departments that handle that. And they've got very organized onboarding programs. And so what we provide to them in terms of our learning hub is not necessarily buy one of these modules and have your new employee go through it, but rather the LMS to LMS connection, the learning management system connection from our system to their system. So it can be one of the many pieces that they use to educate their team. So company size is really one of our biggest challenges. You know, the other difficulty is, and we talk about this often at our volunteer meetings, is the hidden industry that is our industry, right? If I hadn't told you to cut apart a piece of machinery, you'd look at it and you go, oh, it's a piece of machinery, right? I jokingly say, and I said this at the Canadian conference, no customer, end customer goes home at the end of the day and say, oh my gosh, our production line was down, we were stopped, we had nothing to do, but our power transmission distributor came in and replaced the bearing or fixed the belt, and then we were back up. Nobody goes home and gives kudos to their industrial distributor. So it's a hidden industry, and unless you absolutely need them, you don't know that they exist. And so that leads to challenges, gosh, all over the place, from workforce, getting people to come work for you, to sometimes even finding new customers who have these challenges and don't know who to turn to.
It's just surprising because for the longest period of time, I don't think any one of us knew what chip was inside our phones or our equipment or devices. And here came along Intel that suddenly said Intel inside, right?
Yes,
And then
yes.
suddenly everyone said, oh, there's a, I'm now aware of, and I should be distinguishing and discerning in terms of which machine should I get or which device I should get, whether it has an Intel inside or not. Now, we've gone past that, and I understand, but that's exactly the challenge that you're speaking about, right?
Mhm.
The corollary to that is nobody asks what's the intel inside that vibrates my phone. But what you're saying is there is a piece of motor, belt,
Mhm.
bearing, something moving that is there that we don't think about. Now, the funny thing is, not thinking about it is the success of the industry,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. Yes.
And
Yeah. Well,
so,
I mean, think about the chip industry, as you mentioned, right? When did everybody get in an uproar about the chip industry? When there were no chips available,
yeah.
right? So you don't want your industry to be known because of a tragedy. We're okay with being hidden because we do our jobs well. The other thing I will say is that our members do themselves a disservice. Our members are very much hands-on, salt of the earth, humble people, and they don't do a good job of promoting themselves because that's just who they are. I mean, they're there to serve their customers. They themselves, as leaders, know that the customer comes first, and their first responsibility is to make sure that that line doesn't go down, that that process keeps moving. And so they don't take credit, and they don't publicly, brag about the role that they have. And it's, while it served them well in terms of serving their customers, it does present some other challenges.
So what I'm hearing is each of the individual members are the superpower, not the superhero, right?
Exactly.
And so most people recognize who are the superheroes, but all of them are superheroes because of that cape that they put on, and that cape is PTDA, or
Exactly.
members of PTDA. So
Yes.
amazing, very cool. And one of the other conversations I wanted to have with you was is getting your leadership take. Now, we're talking about, yes, you said you've got a small team, but then you've got 100 volunteers. But if I was to ask you, like all the members and their employees, the PTDA would be what, 100,000, a million? How many people would you
Oh
be?
gosh, I will put it more at maybe 30 to 50,000.
30 to 50,000. Now,
Yeah.
so think about it, right? That's a lot of people whose lives you're impacting. So I'd love to get your leadership take on ingenuity. And more
Hmm.
importantly, the human side of ingenuity as it relates to you, your organization's success. What's your take? When has it worked well? When has it not? And what have you learned?
I have a lot of it didn't work stories, and that's just from being in charge of a volunteer organization for more than a decade. Our role as association leaders, as association executives, is to take the ideas that our members generate and make them possible. Sometimes we're restricted because of budgetary concerns or resources, or we just don't. But how can we take what it is that they want to accomplish and actually turn it into something? And sometimes it doesn't turn out exactly the way that we had anticipated. Sometimes they make decisions that, in our expert opinion, maybe is not the way to go. And sometimes it turns out we're wrong. So I'll give you an example. Right after I became CEO, we were doing our industry summit in Dallas. Fantastic city, right? Great opportunity. And at the time, we were still doing offsite closing events. And so we took our president, we took actually two volunteers, our president and somebody else, when we went to look at places that we could have an offsite event. And one of the places we went to was Cowboy Stadium, which is now AT&T Stadium in Dallas, right? Huge, Jerry Jones's house, right? Of course, we walk in, we're on the field. They're looking around and going, "We're having it here." And I said, "Okay, yeah, like back off. Let's look at a contract. Let's look at the pricing." The pricing was onerous. The contract was worse. It literally was, "We can cancel your event 2 weeks before your event and you are out your deposit." It was probably the most one-sided contract I've ever seen when it came to an event. And so I brought it back to the board. It's the only contract that I've actually gone back to the board and said, "Hey, you might want to rethink this." And they disagreed with me. And we went ahead with the event. It turned out they still talk about it. This was in 2012. They still talk about it. It was the most fantastic event we ever had. I was wrong. And I admitted it to the board because I was wrong. But, sometimes as a leader, you may disagree with what the direction is, but it's your job, it's your responsibility to execute it to the best of your ability. There have been other times like that, where they've disagreed, but
Though I don't know if I would put that you were wrong. I think your job to your board is to highlight a risk, right? Now, exactly how your members' success is how we don't think about things. When risks don't happen, yes, for the longest period of time, I believe it was at the Wimbledon that they kept on paying an insurance amount, every year, and it was about, a couple of £1 million that they had to pay every single year. And everyone kept on saying, well, should we be, lowering our insurance contract? Well, guess what? They found out they shouldn't have, because at the pandemic time, that's when they recovered all of their costs for the X number of years that they'd been paying. So I don't know if I'd put that as wrong, but I completely understand where you're coming from and the story that you're telling, which is your job was to highlight the risk. The board took a decision. I think the second part of it is just as important, which is after you highlighted the risk, fine, decision went the way it did, you executed on commitment. Like that's all that matters. So I'd say that's a brilliant story of how you played your role at both sides, right? Ahead of and then during. I think that's absolutely fantastic. But you know what? We're going to do a bit more, just a couple more minutes on this, on this line of questioning on ingenuity. I do think I'd love to get a bit more take on events is one aspect of the role. In how we've spoken in when we met and we had the conversation, I think you do a lot more than events. Like that's a key part. Don't get me wrong. I completely understand. Do you want to touch on the foundation aspect of it? Because I think that's a key area as well, which I don't think gets talked enough.
The PTDA Foundation has been in existence, 30 years, I want to say. And it is the charitable arm of PTDA, which sounds unusual because PTDA is a nonprofit, and it's all based on US law, right? US IRS tax law. So as a trade association, we're able to do some things for our members, right? We exist to serve our members. Our tax status is you can deduct your dues as a business expense, but it's not a charitable contribution. The PTDA Foundation exists to serve the power transmission, motion control, distribution industry. The foundation has no members. In fact, technically, their members are the board of trustees. But they are a charitable organization. So contributions made to the foundation can be deducted as a charitable deduction, which is it's a much better write-off than a business expense. But what the foundation has taken on as their primary challenge for the last decade or so, oh, even longer, maybe 2 decades, has been this workforce initiative that I mentioned earlier. That one of the challenges is because we're a hidden industry, because people don't know who we are, it makes it more difficult to hire people because first you have to explain who you are and what you do. It's not as simple as, oh, I'm going to work for Nike, right? Everybody knows who Nike is and what they do, so you don't have to explain it. Although I would say the same about association management. My dad was a teacher, and I've been in association as you mentioned, I was with IROM so I've been in association management for almost my entire professional career. My dad never understood what I did. The only time he understood was when I was a finance manager, and he understood that I paid the bills. So it's a challenge. So it's a challenge for us as association executives to hire people. It's a challenge for our members to hire people, because those who do think they know what our members do think that it's dark, dirty, and dangerous, which it completely is not.
Sure.
So the foundation has taken on the challenge of helping our members do a better job of telling who they are. Our distributor members in particular are very good at sales. They are excellent at talking about the products. They're excellent at talking about the services. They're excellent at talking about the way that they serve their customers. What they have not been excellent at, because they've not had to, is talking about what a fantastic place they are to work, how you get autonomy, how you get flexibility in your work schedule, how you get the capacity to make a difference whether in the life of the customer or the life of one of their coworkers. And so the foundation is working on that. They're creating a program, we call it our Building Awareness campaign, to help our members do a better job of telling their story so that it resonates with potential new hires. Job descriptions, job postings that start must work 40 hours and be able to lift boxes of up to 40 pounds. That's not how you start a job posting anymore. It worked 30 years ago. It doesn't work now. So they just need a little bit of education and a little bit of assistance on it. And so that's what the foundation is working on, that between that and our new scholarship program, which is for students and employees of member companies, of industry employers, because the foundation serves the entire industry. They are working to help overcome the challenges that our members have faced when it comes to finding new hires and bringing new life into their companies.
Understand. And I think you're right. I mean, those were some of the conversations we all collectively contended with during our time with you. And I think it is a key area for the PTDA to think about, and not just for your member organizations, but also for the PTDA itself. So that's great. And we're about at that time where we're starting to wind down a bit and get to a few very quick sort of responses. So how about leadership? What do you look for, groom for, and nurture in the people you hire, or that you'd like people within your industry get hired?
So one of the things that we put in every job posting is curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
We need people who can think beyond their lane. As a small organization, while every staff person does have specific responsibilities, it's important that they understand what's going on with the entire organization. So we look for people who are not afraid of asking questions. In fact, during our job interview process, if we say, do you have any questions for us? And their answer is no, not really. It's like, yeah, they're probably not the right person, because surely there must be something that I didn't explain well. We look for people who believe in collaboration, right? Who don't want to just come in, do their job, stay in their silo. We want people who want to be a part of a team. And in terms of leadership, one of the things that I encourage with everybody who works for me is that should they ever choose to leave PTDA, I hope they never do, but should they, I want everyone to leave with more tools in their toolbox than they walked in with. That is my responsibility as an employer, as a supervisor, is to grow their skill set and to grow it in a way that they want to grow. I don't want to walk around and say, yeah, you're going to do this now because I need somebody to do it. I'd be much more excited. And I've had this happen where people come to me and they say, we're starting this new program. I'd really like to be a part of it. So those are just a few of the things that I look for when I'm hiring somebody for any position really, but particularly somebody who's going to be leading volunteers or working very closely with their colleagues on our team.
Love curiosity, love collaboration. I think both of those are key, on this skill building aspect of it, and how you said that's your responsibility as a leader. Now I'm going to talk about a meme, which is a very stereotypical trope, but there's a CEO and a CFO, and the CEO says we should be spending a lot more money on training our people. And the CFO says, what if we train them and they leave? And the CEO says, what if we don't and they stay?
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
So
and I have had people leave, right? I mean, we're a small organization. We have very limited vertical mobility, right? I mean, if you're a director at the organization, the next step is my job, and I'm not leaving for a while. But we have the ability to grow broadly, and that's the adding the tools in the toolbox. And people do leave, and while I'm like devastated because now I have to replace them, I'm thrilled for them.
Yes.
Because they're, I left. I left an organization I'd been with for 16 years, and it was really hard. But I left not knowing I was going to be the CEO of an association. I worked for PTDA for 4 years before I became the CEO. But you've got to be able to give people that opportunity.
And when they leave, they become your ambassadors if you've treated them well and trained them well. So, you'd rather have someone who leaves and then becomes your, that's your ambassador out in the world. So absolutely. And this has been an absolute pleasure having you on and having this conversation. I think there's so much about the PTDA, its respective members, and PTDA as an association that you've helped demystify, debunk, clarify, which I think our listeners are going to be extremely rewarded for getting to know. But before we wrap this up, I want you to have the last word, because I came into this right with a certain set of structure and a conversation that I wanted to have. But you came into this, you probably had some thoughts that you might have wanted to share, and just because of my questions, you never got to. So let me give you the last word. Is there something that you want to share that I didn't ask about?
Oh my gosh. I get the opportunity to be on platforms, right? I get the opportunity to stand in front of my membership and talk about all the great things that we do. But honestly, what I do, I couldn't do without the team that I have behind me. And I don't mean behind me, I mean beside me,
Sure.
right? You don't see them on the stage. They're the ones manning the registration desk. They're the ones answering the phones. They're the ones getting the registration processed. I mean, their work makes me look good. And I'm very excited about the team that we have. I can't be more proud of their collaboration. That nothing makes me happier when I go to schedule a meeting with one of my colleagues and I can't because they're too busy meeting with each other. So, I mean, just rely on your team, hire good people, hire people who do things that you can't do or you don't do well, and then use them for that.
Having experienced firsthand one of those conferences, and just getting to know you a bit more, clearly your people are doing an absolutely amazing job, because they do make you and the PTDA look great. So thank you so much, Ann. This was fantastic. Thank you for taking the time and sharing your insights. Our listeners would love to hear more from you. We will tag you and the PTDA in our show notes.
Wonderful. Thank you. This is a pleasure. I appreciate it.